And you are live.
I'd like to call the Health and Social Services Committee to order. Um, do attendance, please.
Sure. Amobian,
Here.
Freeman, Baylor, Neal,
Here.
Holland,
I heard you was trying to get it off, but my fingers weren't working.
We know you're here, Ginger. Thanks.
yep, and Holland.
All members are present except Councilman Freeman.
Correct.
May we have a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting we had, please?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Then moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved as presented. 2 weeks ago, this was not on the original agenda for a reason. 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with Mr. Lash and Mr. Vince Curry about the situation we're facing at White Pond Villa. And as I was talking to Mr. Lash, he was telling me all of the things that the city employees are doing with this situation. And it became apparent to me that if I didn't know, I just assumed that other council members weren't aware of all of the work that's involved behind the scenes. Because I know that in Akron, we are trying to have and preserve an age-friendly city. And as I read the articles in the newspaper, I became very concerned, particularly about the senior citizens in the building who were unable to get to their apartment units and to get their medications because of the elevators being inoperable. So as I spoke with Mr. Lash, I asked him if he could give a status report to council so you could hear all the work that's going on behind the scenes and the different things they're doing, trying to help the company, the owners of the building to correct the situation. And he agreed to come forth with his staff to give us a thorough status report. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lash and his team. And I asked if we could hold out questions until they finish presenting, if that's okay with the committee. Okay, Mr. Lash, will you please take over?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you regarding this matter. The issue here at this property we've taken very seriously. Today we have a team assembled to bring the facts and to answer any questions that you may have regarding this particular property. I have with me my division manager of housing compliance, Dwayne Greger. He will share with you the actions that his team and his staff have taken at that property. And we also have a member of Akron Fire Department with us as well that will bring a status from their perspective. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Dwayne Greger.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lash. Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee members, Dwayne Greger, Housing Administrator. Our office first became aware of the elevator issues at White Pond Villa, 477 White Pond Drive on January 7th. We were actually notified by the property managers. They took it upon themselves to give us a heads up that they were having elevator issues. At any given time, we're dealing with 2 or 3 complaints, active complaints on individual units in that building. When the complaints regarding the elevators began to expand, we were able to determine that the fire department, the Akron Fire, was making the direct contacts with the property managers. It was at that point, once I was assured that there was another city agency that was kind of taking point on that issue and having the direct contact regarding the elevators, that we allowed the Akron Fire to assume the lead on that, and we arranged ourselves to be in support if it came to a point where we felt that the situation was grave enough to possibly require an evacuation of the building, then we would be there in support of Akron Fire for those activities. So subsequent to that, we've had regular contact with the local property managers. We've attempted some contacts with the owners. We have had contact with the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The Detroit office is aware of this situation. They are monitoring the situation closely. And the conversation that I had this morning with the on-site property manager was that both of the elevators on site are up and running, and the report to their corporate office regarding a long-term solution to the elevator issues at that building has not been made known to the local staff on site, but I'm hoping that they will provide a copy of that to us if and when we're able to have a meeting with the regional management.
Thank you, Dwayne. Would you
Thank
mind? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to, we have a member of the Akron Fire Department. Captain Haas is with us as well to provide a perspective from Akron Fire. If you will, Captain Haas, would you provide that?
Yes, thanks for having me. Just to let you know, also, I have Chief Easley here with me here in the room. So the current status right now of the elevators is that they have what I would call a Band-Aid fix on it right now. They have, at any time that elevator can go down, we have been monitoring it for a couple weeks now. They have on order a part that supposedly parts that's going to total up to $4,000, and they're waiting on that to be put in place. I've been told that the original time frame they got for that was 6 to 9 weeks, and that was about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So that's why the elevator will shut down for a period of time, and then they'll attempt another Band-Aid fix until they can get this expensive part in that's going to hopefully solve the problems long term. They did have an emergency on Friday. That was a separate emergency where somebody had hit the button inside, the emergency button, which required the fire department to come out and get them off of the elevator. So that's what happened on Friday. We noticed when we went out there that somebody had removed the elevator key, which is a key that the fire department can go in and take control of the elevator. That has since been put back in place and is operational. And we are working on getting a backup key for that, so that if this key gets misplaced again, we have a backup key in place. We were told originally when the elevators went down that only the fire department can access the elevator. So when this part goes bad again, at that time, only the fire department can access the elevator. Well, that wasn't true then because we didn't have this elevator key to give us control. So now, if the elevators go down,
whatever happened with the dressings, whatever happened with the folding tables, you still can't get those, Maurice?
I'm sure we can now.
So I think we need, yeah.
Well, you told me they were ordered. Did you do cancel order? Oh, I forgot what.
sorry. So anyway, so now we have this key in place. So if the elevators does go down again with this Band-Aid fix, we should be able to access that key and operate the elevator. And so I'm gonna make sure we get a copy of this key so that the on-site manager, you know, if we have to, we can train the on-site manager or someone to operate that elevator for emergency, for not emergency, but like if someone has to go to a doctor's appointment, somebody needs medication, things of that nature. So that's what we have in plan at the fire department for this problem going forward. And I can clarify any more if anyone has any direct questions.
Thank you, Captain. Madam Chair.
Is there anything else to present, Mr. Lash, at this time?
Madam Chair, that's all the information that we have to date. Any questions that you or any members of council may have, we will entertain. And any questions that we may not be able to answer, we will get the information for you immediately or as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. I guess my first question, because I'm not really sure what our role is in this, what obligations we have. I know we have obligations to our citizens to ensure that they're in a safe and healthy environment. particularly those that were down on the main floor and couldn't get up to get their insulin and other medications. I was particularly concerned about them. I'm just curious, Mr. Greger, are there any other violations other than the elevator breaking down? I mean, that's serious enough, but I'm just wondering, are there any other things that have come to our attention?
Yes, we're currently working with the residents of 4 individual units on, well, 3 units that have violations that the owners have been ordered to correct. They are coming up on their compliance date shortly. And then 1 other issue where we've been working with a tenant on a complaint to get an inspection scheduled. So we have 4 active case files on among the 173 units in that building.
Now, are you working with Mr. Vince Curry on these things, or this is separate from him?
We don't work with Mr. Curry directly. Mr. Curry is a conduit for complaints in many cases.
Okay, okay. Now, Sarah, I can't see hands. I'm on my phone, so if there are hands raised, please let me know. I
Sure.
just have one other question. Being that it's going to take 6 to 9 weeks or whatever they claim to correct this problem, I'm hoping it's a permanent fix, but I don't know. It sounds like they've been doing a lot of patchwork. What are we obligated to do? This is to the firemen. If you could tell me what our responsibility obligations are when something happens there to tenants, particularly around chronic conditions and illnesses and medications and those things. Could you hear the question, sir?
Yes, I'm sorry, we were discussing it. So with the elevator, again, so this part, that, just to be clear on this part, that's taken 6 to 9 weeks. We're about halfway through that, and this is a part that's very expensive. That's why I think they were trying to not order this part, and we put pressure on them to make sure this part gets ordered. So we feel pretty confident that this part is going to solve the problem long term. As far as the jurisdiction on this, it falls back to the building department. But of course, the fire department, we're very concerned about the citizens ourselves. So we're making sure that the right pressure gets applied all the way around to make sure that we get this up and running and get this problem solved as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there hands raised, Sarah?
Yes, there are. We'll start with committee members. I can see that Councilwoman Holland has her hand raised.
Okay, please, Councilwoman Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the gentlemen who are before the committee. I have a number of different questions, and I'll try and keep them concise. I just want to make sure I have a correct understanding that the occupants of this building are, without exception, elderly and or disabled. Am I correct about that understanding?
Yes, Councilwoman, that is our understanding.
Thank you. And Captain Haas, I think this question would be for you. Appreciating as I do that there is a Band-Aid type fix in place to make these 2 elevators temporarily operational. I'm sure that AFD has in place a plan for emergency evacuation in the event that one became necessary and neither was operational, notwithstanding the Band-Aid fix. Am I correct?
So these buildings have their own, they're to have their own emergency plans. Of course, we have our standard operation procedures we use that's blanketed for all high rises that we would use in an emergency situation.
And under these circumstances where we have a temporary Band-Aid fix applied to these 2 elevators, would it be a reasonable understanding that AFD has already adopted the view that a call to that location will take you to the plan B? Are we operating under that assumption within AFD?
So we've been told by the elevator company that even if this elevator goes down like it did previously that we can access it with that key. Our problem was for a little bit, there wasn't a key. Now we have that key, so even if the Band-Aid gives, we should still be able to operate that elevator, take control of it. What that means is we take control of the elevator. So it's our understanding that no matter what happens with this elevator, we can take control of that elevator and we can do what we need to do.
Got it. And Madam Chair, you mentioned Mr. Vince Curry as being involved with this matter. Is he so involved in his role as a fair housing advocate? Is that his role here?
That's pretty much my understanding. I did place a call to him, and we were about to have a conversation, but he was in the middle of something, so we've not spoken directly. I have talked with Councilman Neal, who knows Mr. Curry, and I think this is in Ward 4. Is that correct, Mr. Neal? This building?
Yes, it is.
And I know Mr. Neal was reaching out to him and knew him, and I think knew about this situation because it's been going on for some time.
My understanding as well. And Mr. Lash, perhaps you would know this. Do you know whether there is anything pending with the Akron Civil Rights Commission with regard to this particular property or these issues?
Councilwoman, I am not aware of anything pending at the time.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilwoman Holland. Who's next, Sarah?
The next committee member's hand that I see raised is Councilman Neal.
Okay, Mr. Neal, please.
I think he might be frozen. Do you want to move on to another and come back to him?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, Councilman Malik.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Lash, Mr. Gregor, and Captain Haas. I know there's been a lot of focus from city staff on this issue, and I really appreciate it. I know Councilman Fusco and I had a chance to speak with Deputy Mayor Brown, who shared a lot of information about the work that's ongoing as well. I have a couple questions. The first is, what are the actual violations or legal requirements from the housing code or from the state fire code as to having an operational elevator, right? Is it, I guess that's the first question.
Mr. Greg, would you like to?
I can tackle my end of that. So in buildings that have more than one means of egress, such as these buildings do also have stairways, notwithstanding the special needs of the occupants. Elevators in general are covered by the state Division of Industrial Compliance, and normally their licensing and inspections are done through that state office. It's my understanding that state office might have recently sent inspectors to look at the elevators there while they were operating. At least that's what the property managers told me. Where we can make a case that this is covered under the housing code would be that the elevators could be considered a supplied piece of equipment. And because the elevators are supplied with the building, they can be required to be kept in good repair. Of course, given that there are alternate means of egress at the building, if we had an owner that felt that repairing elevators in a building of that type would be beyond their means or their desires, they would always have the option to remove them or to discontinue them from use, which is obviously something that we would not want to see happen in a building with this population. But that's the connection that we make with the housing code authority as it pertains to the elevators as a supplied piece of equipment.
Okay, so there isn't a specific requirement that an elevator be operable under the code. If it's not operable, that's a specific violation.
No, there's nothing in the housing code that states that specifically, other than that the premises is required to have a safe, unobstructed means of egress.
Okay. Thank you. And then Captain Haas, is there any requirements in the state fire code about elevators?
So for our requirement, we just have the two-way communication so that when people are on the elevator, if they get stuck and they need to call, otherwise the state, runs all the, the mandates for the elevators. We just assure that there's two-way communications. And then of course, when there's a problem like this, we do everything we can to make sure that the citizens have what they need, medications and such.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Gerger, to that point, it sounds like there was a referral made to the state, relevant state board. It's the Industrial Commission, or it's the Department of Commerce, or what department is it?
It might be part of the Department of Commerce. I believe it's the Division of Industrial Compliance. And my understanding was that they were notified and they did respond.
Okay. And then one more question. You mentioned, Mr. Greger, that we've attempted to make connection with the property owner. What's that outreach been? And it sounds like it has not been successful.
Well, this property is, Councilman, this property is owned by an LLC, an out-of-state corporation, Apex White Pond LLC, that I believe is incorporated in New Jersey. The main information I have regarding them is from their rental registration, where they name their local agents. I do have contact information for the regional property manager who manages the building, but as far as the actual ownership, I received some information of a possible name of a person or persons in New Jersey. I reached out to them last week via email. I was unsuccessful in an attempt to get a human being on the phone. They have a very well-guarded voice prompt system at their company phone system. My email went unresponded to, and I forwarded that email to the name and contact information I have for the regional property manager. And that was this morning, and I have not heard from him either.
Thank you, sir. And I guess, that just prompts to my mind the idea that, this is not the first time we've talked about out-of-state property owners that are difficult to get a hold of. And when Captain Haas says that, what's being done right now is essentially a Band-Aid, and that there had to be some pressure applied to encourage them to make an investment on a more permanent part, that was difficult. And the unresponsiveness, that's all very frustrating, because these property owners have a legal responsibility, but they also have a moral responsibility. So I'd like us all to think about what we can do as a council to invite the property owners to come speak with us here in a public setting, or otherwise. But I really appreciate your efforts, Mr. Gardner. I know you've been doing a lot in terms of trying to get through this labyrinth that they've set up. But definitely hope that we can make that connection and get some answers. But thank you, everyone, for the information. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Is Mr. Neal, are you connected now?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that. Lost
No
connection.
problem. That's okay. Go ahead.
I may have missed part of the conversation. I think someone who can give us a lot of insight is Mr. Vince Curry. Been working, there's been issues with this property going back 2000. I'm trying to think when the last conversation we had with them, probably around 2014, 2015. I'm just with tenants having issues. One of the last complaints, and I think Mr. Greger was alluding to this, was tenants complaining about mold in their units. The Councilwoman Holland's concern, the tenant mix is just that, it's a mix. It's not all seniors, although there are a lot of seniors in the building. It's rent control. So there are some younger, I would say younger folks that have some mental challenges that live in the unit as well. But about say back around, I'm looking here, December of last year, I received an update. I did have a tenant that lived there that used to keep me abreast with everything. And the envelope, I don't know if you got this, Mr. Greger, the envelope I received actually came from someone in Allentown, PA, that shows all the documentation as far as that the tenants have had back and forth with the property owners, listing all of their complaints and their concerns. The last one I have that shows a report from Miss Kathy Greger was September of last year, where they were supposed to finish I guess all the issues were supposed to be addressed by October. This just says 477 White Pine, and this was for unit number 102. And that complaint dealt with mold, the furnace and heating system. And there were several units that had that concern. I did not learn about the issue with the elevators until, like most of you, through the media. But I do know for good understanding, having Mr. Vince Curry, if he's able to come and share how he's been representing the tenant, would give us a better, more well-rounded perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Yeah, I did reach out to him. I will reach out to him again. My question has to do with, Mr. Greger, you said something to the effect that as long as there are other egresses, the owners can get around the elevator issue. Now, if they elected to not permanently fix the elevators, wouldn't they be obligated to make sure that those individuals that are disabled, physically disabled, would have to be on a main floor, or would that be an obligation that they would have to meet as well? Because obviously many of them can't use the stairs. I guess they have over the last few days with some assistance, but it doesn't sound like that's a regular means of getting around that would be feasible for most of those individuals that have physical challenges.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, I believe I was trying to point to the fact that we're tying the elevators as a supplied piece of equipment that's required to be kept in good repair. I don't believe that these owners are giving up on these elevators. I don't believe that it would be reasonable. I don't believe a reasonable owner could say that abandoning these elevators is even an option.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. So I was just attempting to explain that if we were to issue the order under the requirement for a supplied piece of equipment where they have another option, that they might attempt to use that as a means to comply with the order. That is not the case here, and we would most definitely argue against that as a reasonable solution.
I see. Thank you very much for that clarification. So it sounds like someone has outreached to HUD, and we believe that the owners are working in good faith to get the elevators repaired permanently, and the other complaints are being investigated, I assume. Am I correct in assuming all of that?
Yes, to my knowledge, all those assumptions are correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much for the update, because when I read this in the paper, I was deeply concerned. But after I heard all the work that was happening behind the scenes, it sounds like people were trying to work with the owners and the property managers to get this building up and running. I know that Madam President, I don't know if she's on the call or not, but I know she has been thinking of and talking about a long range vision for addressing a number of these issues. So I'll let her speak to that at some later date. But we thank you so very much for the work that you're doing and giving us the information that you provided. And just know that we'll continue to be available, and hopefully if you need some assistance from us, feel free. And I like the request that Mr. Councilman Shamus has made, that we have the owners, if we can get them, to come before us and talk about their plans of correcting the situation, but not only this, the other concerns. But again, thank you. Are there any other questions or concerns?
Madam
Come
Chair,
before the
yes, I
committee?
can see that there are two hands raised, Councilwoman Mosley and Councilwoman Holland.
Okay, please, let's go with Mosley and then Holland. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank Chief Tucker for jumping on this call as well. I do want to discuss how this came to me, and I sent it over to Chief Tucker as well. One of the residents' daughters, who lives all the way in Columbus, had been calling the management company just to put some context of how this has played out even on social media before it made it to the paper. They had been calling the office because the elevator wasn't working. People couldn't get to their rooms. They put this post up on Facebook and someone tagged me in it. So I contacted Chief Tucker immediately, and he said he would get someone out there. That was on the 8th, but by the 13th, their elevator was down again. And so when we talk about a Band-Aid issue, we're talking about an issue where we have elderly people in wheelchairs in a facility, and that's very concerning. And really talking about what the plan is, whether that comes from the city or from this management company that seems to almost seem like a ghost management company. If something happens in that facility, how do we move those elderly people out of there? Are we doing pop-up inspections of this elevator? Have we checked the records of this elevator company? Who is this elevator company? Because we seem to have a lot of elevators going down around the city. I would like to know who is the elevator company, and is this the same elevator company that other people are having issues with? Like, I think we need to be checking all of these things, because when we talk about a Band-Aid issue, is this something that's happening across the city and other facilities that have elevators and elevator issues? I know the fire department has keys to elevators when things go down. We're sort of kind of in a catch-22 when we talk about a facility with elderly people in it. What do you do? So I really would like for the Akron Fire Department, if they could, and I don't know what the procedure is to that, checking that elevator company, checking their records, seeing whom else they hold records to where there's been some elevator issues, because this is something that's been going on for a long time. And how many Band-Aids do you put on an elevator? It just seems really odd. And again, we need to address these out-of-state property owners. It has to be addressed. Something has to be done. I know this is something that I talked with the law department almost 2 years ago about putting something in place because of these out-of-state property owners. Even if they have to hire local management companies, credible, reputable management companies to run their properties, but for them to not want to respond, and they're making a lot of money off of the city, and for them to not want to respond is definitely an issue. But I think we need to start with this elevator company and seeing what are they being compliant as the elevator company for this building and many others across the country, across the city. And if Chief Tucker could talk about where they may be with this, if there's something that will give us a little more context that you all are dealing with over there. And I appreciate Captain Haas for being on here as well. But this is a problem, and Councilman Neal has been dealing with it for a while. Now it's just spilling over to the rest of us because we know people who have family members in that building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Mosley. Chief Tucker, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Would you like to respond to some of the concerns expressed?
Absolutely. What I can tell you is, first, Councilwoman Mosley, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I appreciate it, because anything like that, we need to know as soon as possible so we can get people out, have them take a look at it. In this particular situation, the elevator company is saying that they can't get the part, just like car manufacturers are saying they can't get certain parts to manufacture more cars. They're saying they can't get this part, and that's why we've had all of these Band-Aid attempted fixes that have taken place. I'm aware of at least 5 or 6 Band-Aids that have been applied since we have started trying to deal with this issue. And again, still waiting for the real part to fix it, which is, from what I've heard, about a $3,000 part. Now, we've applied all of the pressure we can legally within the scopes of the law to expedite this repair. It just hasn't happened yet. So we're kind of bound by what we can do a little bit, but we still have made sure that, let's just say we've made sure that the residents, the people that run this residence, are aware that we think it's in their best interest to get this fixed. And so they are trying to get this fixed in a expedient manner. But it still doesn't help our day-to-day situation. Our day-to-day situation is we have tenants that are there, and like you have said, some of them are handicapped, stuck in their rooms or stuck on their floor, and they can't get down to the lobbies when this elevator is out of service. And we have raised the issue of making sure that these people can get to their medications, they can get their medications up to their rooms, and we are regularly and routinely putting inspectors in that building just to see where things are currently. And we're going to continue to do that. So this is something that's going to stay on our radar until it's fixed. But we have to ride this out, just like the auto industry is having to ride this out until they can get more cars, more of the chips for the cars. So we will continue to keep you updated and let you know what's going on and try to expedite this thing getting fixed.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we are not saying that this is a financial burden to the owners. It is the fact that they're having difficulty getting the part because of the chip or whatever. Okay.
Well,
so they are
they're working. We weren't sure of what the situation was, why it wasn't getting done at first. We made sure that it was not the cost that was the problem.
Okay. Because I know Captain Haas, I believe what he said is that now that they have a key to the elevator, if it becomes inoperable for the tenants in the building, they can control the elevator, can do what they need to do to make it work.
Yes, but it's almost like what they did like back in the 30s and 40s, the 1930s and 40s, when you had an elevator operator, you could actually set someone in that elevator with a key and they could operate it that way.
I see. Okay. Councilwoman Holland, thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief, for that clarity. Although it's certainly not my role to, advise the fire department on its, the scope of its legal abilities, it does strike me that the fire department could, at a certain point, declare the location unsafe from a fire safety perspective, but that's really not the main thrust of what I wanted to say. In my earlier comment, I asked questions about the composition of the tenants in the building, and I did so because both the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title I of that federal statute, and the Federal Fair Housing Act both address the requirement. It's not a nice guy thing. It's not a if we feel like it or if it's not inconvenient or too expensive for us thing. The requirement that accommodations be made, that accessibility be assured for individuals who have different abilities from others. And so while I appreciate that all kinds of circumstances could very well affect how quickly those replacement parts come for the elevator repair, at the same time, I'd like to put out there to everyone in this meeting that there may be a point in time where it's simply not reasonable to expect that the occupants of this building would just be stuck waiting, that the reasonable accommodation at that point could well be the requirement that for the rent that they're paying for accommodations that should be accessible and amenable to their conditions, that those accommodations might have to be changed, that they could in fact need to be moved somewhere else. And this is just, this is just one of many possible scenarios, but I think that all of this goes to the absolute necessity of extending an invitation to Apex White Pond LLC and any other entity that's been involved in the rental, maintenance, or management of this facility. This is a different kettle of fish, if you will, where you have a location that is dedicated to the housing of elderly and disabled individuals. This is not, oh gosh, the elevators are not working and we're inconvenienced. For those of you who happen to see the coverage in area newspapers, a photograph captures a moment where a disabled individual is actually seen awkwardly trying to make his way up the stairs in a way that federal law and state law and local law has made clear he's not expected to have to endure. This is a photograph that was published. And, here's the thing, we can certainly be reasonable in our acceptance of the idea that efforts are being made to fix this, but reasonable cuts both ways. And I think that it is probably more than reasonable to ask that, that this business entity and their management come and talk to Akron City Council about what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Holland. Sarah, are there any other hands?
Yes, Madam Chair, I can see that Councilman Neal has his hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to speak to what we can do as council and working with the administration. We've talked about the establishment of a landlord-tenant council that would deal with best practices. One of my challenges, thank God for Mr. Vince Curry, one of my challenges with this unit, there's one around the corner on Mall, is when there's issues inside, not everyone knows how to advocate on behalf of themselves and their fellow residents. And so if you have someone who gets tired of just having to always be the one advocating and they move out, you lose that contact. But I think if we establish a landlord-tenant council that could educate tenants, not just of the larger units, because when we started having this discussion, we were just talking about tenants that live in housing units, single housing units, as well as landlord units. We can educate everyone and better be able to stay on top of what these issues may be, not to be a punitive thing, but one of educating and support. The other thing is this, in these properties that receive HUD dollars, and it's been said by other council members when we were talking about the other units, we need to find a way of establishing a relationship with them that's proactive, putting things in place so that if we have an issue with HUD properties, there's a way of, there's a challenge if you tell people to put their stuff in escrow and HUD's paying 95% of their rent. So being proactive, putting something in place where we have a relationship with HUD to address that. And then lastly, from the city standpoint, If we've talked about bolstering more support for our housing neighborhood assistance department, those that deal with these issues. I have put in a call, and this information may have been given to us earlier. I don't know if you saw my email, Mr. Greger, and I think this information has been provided to us before, but I don't know how much these units put into the pot, but anyone that has a rental unit, they pay $15+ or maybe more, I forget, per unit. I don't know how many units we have in the city. Have we designated that money to specifically funding extra support to address these housing issues? Because I think that's something we need to look at. If we need to have more boots on the ground to work with tenants, to work with staying up on these complaints, and we're trying to find money, if that money is coming from landlords, is that money coming to support that? And so that's why I asked, what is the dollar amount coming in there? And then last but not least, I mean, when I read in the paper last week about the Stony Brook place, brand new, we need to make sure that anyone that has one of these developments is not taking advantage of our 15-year 100% tax abatement. And if we don't have it within our legislation where there's any kind of retroactive, or we can have control over ceasing them having that tax abatement if we have problems with the property. And I'm not condemning Stony Brook. All I know was what was in the paper. I don't know everything, but I know it was, challenging with that being a brand new place and having those issues. So let me say this. I believe this is why it's critical for us to, as council, for our committees to be, everything that's come to housing has come to us because there's been a problem. When we have an opportunity to finally convene, putting something in place so that we can put a process in place so that we could partner with the administration and establishing the landlord tenant council, hearing from the two fair housing advocate groups on how we can best support their work, and working with folks like AREA, the Akron Canton Real Estate Investment Group, housing providers, to help us put, just strengthen our policy. Sorry for the lengthy explanation.
No, I appreciate this, and thank you so very much. And Sarah, I think have we gotten to all the council members that had their hands up?
Madam Chair, I can see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Okay, just a minute, Councilman Malik. We're gonna take you, and then we're gonna end this committee meeting. The only other thing I'd like to do is do a follow-up. And Mr. Lash, I'll give you a call just to see if these concerns that have come up and some possible ways of following up, if this is something that you might spearhead for us, or we can get someone else, whoever you may recommend, to do this for us. But I think there's a lot of information that's been shared and a lot of questions asked that we need to do a follow-up to see where we go from here. Councilman Malik.
I just wanted to get clarification on a point that Mr. Neal made. Mr. Lash, there's already been a landlord tenant council established. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councilman. We actually meet monthly, and Mrs. Cheryl Stevens of EANDC is the current chair.
Okay. And how long has that been ongoing?
That actually started back in September. I mean, the mayor has been working on this for a number of months, but they've been active since September, and they still they meet monthly.
Sure. Well, it sounds, I appreciate that. It sounds like that, it would be helpful if we as council could interface with them as well. So that may be one direction as we go forward.
Okay. More information. Again, thank you so very much for this discussion. And I think a lot of things have been shared, and I'll reach out to Mr. Lash so we can do a follow-up. With that being said, excuse me.
I'm sorry, I can see that Councilman Neal has his hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Neal. The last comment or question too, so we can get off this out of this committee meeting. Do we have any other meetings today?
Go back out. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. It's nice to know that the tenant council has been established in September, but we have a lot of different task force. What I'm speaking to is one that is more holistic and inclusive, because I don't know if our tenant council includes folks from White Pond Villa. I don't know if it includes people from Stony Brook. I don't know if it includes people from the two developments on the east side. We're talking about hearing from grassroots folks that are impacted by these things. So I appreciate it. It's good to know that it's established, but it's being expansive so that not just representative from these groups, but make sure that there's representation from every ward as well. Because I know one part that has started, I don't know where it stands. Some of you may remember when we had tenants coming down talking about the water bill issues, and Judge Odom had established something. So to the point, being more expansive. So I look forward to, again, seeing how we can have a conversation, bringing all these people in and making it more holistic. Thank you.
Madam
And
Chair,
thank you very much. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, if I could just respond to that, Mayor, Councilman, you make an excellent point. And just so for the record, we did go through that process and exercise. The mayor considered candidates from across the city. And this was established before the Erickson Wilbeth home issue arose, and we were aware, and before Stony Point and before White Pond. But we are open, and we will consider additional members. But I just wanted to make that point that those, individuals from various wards were considered from the grassroots level as well. The mayor considered everyone, so it was a fair process that was employed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lash.
Thank you.
With that said, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next meeting of the day is the Public Utilities and Green Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, McKittrick, Connor, Mosley, and Holland. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Public Utilities and Green Committee meeting to order. If we could please have a roll call.
Freeman.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Mosley.
Aye.
Holland.
Aye.
All committee members are present.
Okay, thank you. And if I could please have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, we have one new item, which I'm going to ask Ms. Viviano if she would please read in for us today. Thank you.
Sure. Item number 3 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts to replace and disconnect lead service lines throughout the city of Akron and declaring an emergency.
Very good. Mr. Ludell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. This $550,000 project that we are going to advertise and award is basically to get in front of our resurfacing program, and just a part of the resurfacing program. Unfortunately, we see the cost of these lead services going up. We budgeted about $4,500 per lead services or per lead service. So it's going to do about 120 of them. We will have further legislations as we proceed with the resurfacing and with the ARPA monies, probably later this spring or early summer. You are going to see the list. We are probably 80% through the list with outside utility companies and internal departments to finalize the list. So like I said, about 3 weeks, you guys are going to see the resurfacing list for 2022. And we plan to put some smaller projects out with the ARPA money to attract some smaller businesses and hopefully minority business to do some of this work. We're currently looking at a couple companies, and they're working with our water department to come out on site as we do them. The last 2 weeks has been a challenge for our water department, as you've probably read. We have about 10 main breaks today that we're working on. We're not working on all of them, obviously, but Saturday we fixed 3, and then we had 6 more come in overnight. So it's a moving target. Nothing's real bad right now. No one's without water, and we're going to keep working at these. But once things slow down, we have invited these small companies to come and kind of shadow us on the equipment they're going to need. And we are going to offer to tap the main for them. The tapping machine itself is quite expensive. So if they're on X address and they excavate the road, we'll tap the main for them. They'll run the copper. We'll provide the curb box. They'll install the curb box. And then they'll have to restore the hole. There again, before resurfacing, it's a lot easier, and then we'll come back and resurface the road. So with that, this project here is for 120. We've talked about this before. We've got a little bit under 3,000 left. Out of our 82,000 active services across the city, we're in such better shape than most communities are or utilities are. And we really feel confident by 2024, with all this ARPA dollars and the state 5 million we got, we'll be able to eliminate all the lead services in our system. So that's kind of a long explanation, but I wanted to kind of give you some background, sir.
Are there any, as far as resurfacing, are there any streets that are in just dire condition that it would be disadvantageous to wait for the resurfacing? That may need, there may be some lead lines that need to be replaced, or you're really trying to stick with the resurfacing and the lead service schedules?
Well, I'm not going to say never, sir, but we would really strive not to resurface a street that has lead under it. We're going to get the lead out before we repave that street. With issue 4 monies and what we've done in the last 5 years, the 200 miles we've resurfaced in the last 4 years, I don't think we have those really bad streets anymore, okay, where you can hardly even drive up and down them. So that's what we're in a lot better shape than we were 4 years ago. So now it's the whole thing of planning. We need to talk to Dominion. Are you going to replace the gas line? Is water going to be coming in there? Is fiber optics coming in there? We want to be ahead of all this. And unfortunately, sometimes we do resurface a road and it may have an 80-year-old water main. And guess what? We have a water main break 6 months from now. It happens. Okay.
Well, you are looking at a schedule though. And
oh, we've got it all laid out, and we want to get these services done before we resurface the road. Absolutely.
Okay. So you said about 4,500 per and 3,000 left in the city, you said?
Yeah, just under 3,000, like 2,800 and some change are left.
Okay. Excellent. All right. I'd like to open it up to any questions we'll begin first with committee members. Looking around if I see any hands. Yes, Ms. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Luddle, I anticipate some questions from some of the folks who watch our committee meetings like they are, I don't know, their daily stories, if you will. And the question will be, can we have some clarity around the payment for these lead line replacements in terms of ARPA dollars versus infrastructure dollars? Would you anticipate that near-term ARPA will be covering these expenses, but that eventually infrastructure dollars will be covering these expenses? Thoughts?
Well, until we find out the number on the infrastructure dollars, our goal is, we received 5 million from the state of Ohio. We're using 3.5 million of ARPA money out of our allotment. We have a grant that we obtained before ARPA of 2.5 million from OPWC. That's a grant, it's not a loan. So with that, that's a total of $11 million. So if you just take the 11 million at 4,500, that's about 2,400 lead services. Okay. Like I said, we have about just under 2,900. Now you throw in our water main replacement of ARPA money. And I think I gave that example, and I don't have those numbers right on top of my head, but we pick some streets that may have 15 lead services. So when we go and replace that water main out of our ARPA money, we'll eradicate those lead services also. So this money, I should have gave you a short answer. This money is just definitely just ARPA money. If infrastructure money comes down the line, absolutely. We're going to leverage that money to get rid of the rest of the lead, but get rid of those old water mains, and it's all condition based. You know, if that water main's 100 years old, the one that broke on Center Street a couple of weeks ago that you're very familiar with, 1928, but our records go back to 1913. We didn't even have a water main break on that section of pipe. And when we looked at it, it wasn't that bad. So, but we may have one that's 60 years old that has 10 water main breaks history, not in the last so many years, but it's like, that might be a higher priority than some of those old mains. It all comes down to funding, obviously, but we've done a good job over the years with what we had. So we're going to try to stretch every dollar we can, the best we can.
Great. Very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Luddle. Really important work that's being done with regard to lead services. One question, in partnership with Guidehouse, do we have a goal of how much of this work we want to be done by minority-owned companies?
Well, you know, when we put this out, we're trying to get 18%, unless we can get a minority company to do it. Okay, so that's our goal. Unfortunately, with the state, we can't hold them to that, but our goal is 18%. If the company isn't a minority company, if it's a minority company, then, you know, it's 100% business owned. But if it's non-minority, we'd like to get them at least 18% of participation. You say, how do they do that? Well, we just don't want to pass through them buying the copper. We want them actually to be working. Are they actually doing the restoration? Are they actually doing the trucking? Or are they actually doing, you know, down in the ditch and helping with the service? Okay, so that's our goal.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other council members that might have questions or comments? All right. Mr. Little, what's your pleasure on this?
Consent's fine, sir.
Okay, then. Okay. Do I have a motion for consent?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Okay, very good. All right, we'll see that that item is placed on the consent agenda.
I'm sorry,
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Chair. Can I do a roll call? I only heard two voices
You know
there.
what? I'm sorry. My apologies. Go ahead.
Freeman,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Mosley,
Aye.
Holland.
Aye.
Thanks so much.
Okay, very good. Again. All right, thanks everyone. And we will adjourn at 3:34. Thank you.
Okay, our final committee meeting of the day is the Housing and Neighborhood Assistance Committee. Those committee members are Fusco, Holland, Mosley, McKittrick, and Connor. Just want to give members a minute to come back to video. It looks like we have all members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah Viviano. So all members are present, as you had mentioned, and that was recorded for the record, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, very good. No need to do a roll call then. We do have the one item that's on the Housing and Neighborhood Assistance agenda, which is the resolution urging the city of Akron to create a neighborhood revitalization program that would provide housing incentives to recent graduates of local colleges and universities. I assume that the sponsor, Mr. Neal, is here to talk about this. Okay, thank you. I'm on my phone versus my typical screen. So Mr. Neal, I can't really see you at this moment, but please, by all means, please comment on this resolution.
Well, I feel you, Mr. Chairman. I'm using two devices as well. Phone to speak, laptop so I can see. But really, sir, I'm open to answer questions from you and from any council members. Per our conversation on Friday, hopefully all councilors had an opportunity to read the supporting documentation with this resolution, which was actually drafted by myself, well, drafted on my behalf by Mr. Westcott from our planning department. And so I'm here to answer any questions. As I spoke with you Friday, we're 7, almost 8 weeks into this, and I only received one question outside of yours, and that was from Councilwoman Mosley. And she can answer if I answered her question sufficiently, meaning that her question was about several folks, and basically, if they have student loan debt, they would qualify for this program.
Gotcha. No, like I said, on the surface, I like it. I like the idea. However, though, it's something that's very, very new. We've not experienced this, although you mentioned before that, and I've been asking around about us doing it as a city. I can't seem to locate where that was. I understand that the police department may have done something like that kind of like on their own. But in my experience, I haven't seen that as an official type of a city program. But I still, for me personally, I have some concerns and I'd like to continue to take time. I know you like to move on this, but I did some research over the weekend, and I kind of came up empty in terms of other cities that have done this. And me personally, like I said, I'd like to see where this has been done. I'd like to request that the city possibly look at this as a pilot program, but also the thing of my thought too was perhaps what we could do is look at our partners with this ARPA funding and housing, of course, being an issue, and us, the city being, unfortunately, as we're all aware, short on staff, short on people to implement programs like this. Wondering if we could partner perhaps with a nonprofit or somebody and perhaps the land bank and put infrastructure in place and have discussions about the possibility of utilizing the ARPA funds and utilizing that as a tool or as a vehicle to get us into a pilot program, see how successful it can be, and then go from there and evaluate afterwards.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, as I stated before, working with Mr. John Moore, who, when he was planning director, it wasn't the exact program, but with Mr. John Moore and Mustard Seed, we rehabbed 2 homes, made them LEED certified, right there on Hartford Avenue. We did 2 homes there. In my ward, I've had groups get homes for $1. Now you ask, how do we do this? And I shared with you, we would do it the same way I believe we just passed legislation to give away a lot for a little. The challenge, the thing with this is this would not require ARPA dollars, not this portion of the program. What this would actually do is save us money because we're not spending $10,000 to $15,000 to tear down a home. When we spoke Friday, and I think this would be a helpful tool for us for council, is remember I asked you to make a chart. On one side put pros, the other side put cons, and list all the benefits. Now, the reason why I'm asking that we look at this now is because we've got $400,000 listed for demolition. I share with everyone that Habitat for Humanity, before we demo a home, they send in a team to strip it of everything that has value. And because there was a home on my street that was listed for demo for back taxes, the house was listed for demolition for back taxes, a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath Tudor for back taxes. They told me that 30% of the homes that get torn down don't need to be torn down. So since this proposal was drafted back in 2013, I think, at that time we were tearing down about 500 homes a year, 150 homes. If we were still, I don't think we're tearing down that many now, but 150 homes a year, that's 1,200 homes over an 8-year period. And if it was 2012, that'd be more than 8 years. 1,200 homes. And I don't know if most of these homes, proportionally what wards they're falling in, but I can tell you a disproportionate number of these homes are falling in my ward. And these are homes that can be saved. And by saving these homes, just like we say, we give away a lot because the city doesn't have the money to maintain the lot.
Now you might be able to
come. When we create a problem when we tear these homes down, not just for having to maintain a lot, it creates a safety issue. I like using this example. If you have a bad tooth and you pull one tooth, depending on where it is, it won't affect your smile too much. But you start pulling 4 or 5 teeth, you won't have an appealing smile. So to your point, Mr. Chairman, this is not a difficult problem. This is not a labor-intensive process. We are already giving away lots. These would just have homes on them. But here's the advantage. We would have a higher tax base that we're bringing in. It would help us recruit. We lost 10,000 people since our last census. It would help us keep young people in our communities. It would help families get a leg up on creating generational wealth. And I've got an email I'll be happy to share of a resident that's in my ward that lives on Hollinger that spoke about having 5 homes torn down on her street. That's an impact of property value on the homes that are left, safety and security issues. So this, again, this is the resolution. This is the resolution saying that this is something that we have resolved to see through. It's when we put together the ordinance that we can be more detailed. And I think if we know that there's a precedent set by just government period, especially Akron City government, that we don't move too fast on things. It took us, I don't see Mr. Freeman on here, but I see him. I don't know how long it took us to get the speed humps. I presented something to you that council passed regarding the Neighborhood Mobile Resource Center. That was passed back in 2013. And so it's not an issue of us having a problem of moving too fast. It's that we move too slow. But because of the $400,000 that sits before us and the money that we could save and the families and neighborhoods that we can impact is why I'm bringing this back before us now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Neal. I think we all share the concerns that you have in reference to that, what this does to a neighborhood, to a community whenever houses are torn down. But, we'd also have to determine like who would be, I think an empty lot, a vacant lot versus a place, an improved lot with a house on it, that's probably more labor intensive, to be honest with you. And we have to have personnel to go out and evaluate and say, well, this one is savable, this one is not, and then have the individuals in place to be able, it seems like there's a whole lot of moving parts, and I don't want to get into a long debate because I want other people.
No, sir, it's not a long debate, but Mr. Fusco, we don't just go.
Because who's going to do the work? That's the question.
Mr. Fusco, we don't just go tear down a house. We have to go evaluate that house. It's all part of the same process, except instead of tearing it down, we say that this house can be salvaged.
Okay, thank you. First, I'm going to go to Sharon Connor. I see her hand is up.
Mr. Neal, just a couple questions. As a person who loves historic housing and has seen many being taken down with beautiful woodwork, you talked about criteria. What other criteria do you see in the person who's receiving this home? Yes, they may have student debt, but what other criteria are you looking for before we go giving houses?
Well, Councilwoman Connor, the criteria would be set by our present process, which determines if a house can be destroyed or not, if it needs to be demoed. If it can be saved, then these persons would take our city's work orders. They have 7 years to bring it totally up to code.
What's the criteria for the applicant?
That's listed in the proposal. I'd be happy to go through the proposal with you.
That's okay. I'll go. Not necessary. I'll go back and reread it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sharon. Okay, very good. Shamus Malik, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Neal. I guess just trying to get a broad sense of what the purpose of the program is. So under this program, the city will be purchasing pieces of property and then reconveying them?
No, sir. City doesn't purchase any property. That's it. I don't know. Did you have a chance to read the proposal?
It's right here, sir.
Okay. So in the proposal, the city does not purchase any property. The same way we do where we go through the process of determining if a property should be demoed. There's just one extra step. And if that property can be rehabbed, you list what those rehab requirements are based on our housing regulations and what those costs are. The tenant, the prospective homeowner would still go through a process to see if they were qualified to be able to manage that debt and manage that home. And then if they win the bid on that house, they would take that house over and rehab it. I mean, like I said, working with Mr. Moore, we did 2 homes, made them LEED certified. We gave homes to nonprofits for $1. We do it on this council all the time. We give properties away. This is not difficult.
Mr. Neal, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to. I'm confused. The resolutions are here, right? It says, whereas the proposed neighborhood revitalization program would require the city of Akron to purchase properties within the city boundaries that are previously vacant, abandoned, etc. Give the property a qualifying applicant at no cost while maintaining a lien on the property, inspect the property, etc. That's
okay, Mr. Malik. Then that part needs to be correct. I asked if you please read the proposal.
okay. Then if I can, sir, at the end of the proposal, it says process. It says number 1, city identifies and acquires a single family residence. Number 2, city identifies a potential purchaser, etc., etc. Number 7, city transfers property to owner and monitors work. Right.
That's the same way we do with the lot for a little. The city is not we don't purchase the properties that we demo. The city doesn't purchase those. They're transferred to us. The land bank wipes the back taxes clean and then we demo them. So there's no purchasing by the city. The same process we go through to demo these homes is the same process we do to transfer them, except we don't demo them. We save that demo cost. And again, I appreciate, I shared this with Mr. Fusco. Take a piece of paper for me and write pros on this proposal and cons, because that will help us as we go through writing out all the details in the ordinance. But as I shared with Mr. Fusco, we all rightfully so passed the legislation urging Congress to forgive student loan debt. We didn't get into all the details. We knew just in principle that was a good thing to do. But let me share this with you. If you've known anybody that has had a house foreclosed on them by the bank, and the bank wipes that debt clear and gives them the home, you know what the next thing is they get? A 1099 for whatever the value of that home is. And that's a tax bill. But we didn't go into those details because we know that's worked out by Congress, and we trust our representatives that they would address that. But if you've got a student that has 250, which I know a couple that do, or $100,000 in student loan debt, and they write it off, and then they send them a 1099, we throw them out as they say, out of the frying pan and into the fire. But again, we knew in principle, asking Congress to wipe out student loan debt was good. We didn't go into the fine details. This right here is a program that we can have intimate oversight over. And I believe the proposal, that's why I say, please, looking at the proposal, write pros and cons. And I think we'll find as a council, this is something that we can provide to help help young residents move into our city, help them build generational wealth, and help stabilize our neighborhoods. Because of having a home where you have a tax base and that person is bringing their discretionary income into our community is much better than a vacant lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Malik.
Sure, thank you, sir. I guess I appreciate the answers, Mr. Neal. I guess my concern is that it doesn't seem to make sense for this to be done by resolution, right? I don't have anything against the idea of what's stated here of purchasing property and conveying it to people in order to give them an opportunity to be homeowners and to have equity, especially folks who have student debt. But if we're going to do that, then we should have an ordinance that sets out that program, and we should vote on that ordinance, and we should make sure that the city administration is supportive and willing to administer that program. Respectfully, the language here says that that property will be purchased and that it'll be reconveyed, right? And I think, and the fact that there's not clarity around that, I think speaks to exactly why it should be an ordinance, so that we know exactly what it would do and what it won't do. Passing a resolution or not passing a resolution and then like waiting for an ordinance is not going to do anything. If we should move forward with this, we should move forward with it as an ordinance so that we can be clear what it won't do or what it will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Terrace.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
just briefly.
Just answer. I think Mr. Malik spoke to why it's important to bring in the ordinance first. I mean, the resolution first and then the ordinance. With the sanitary napkins for women, we brought in a resolution first, and then we brought in an ordinance so that we could work out the details. The resolution is so that we, as a council, show our resolve to address this issue in this manner. And then we come back with an ordinance and work out the details.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Tara Mosley.
Thank you, Chairman Fusco. I agree with my colleague, Councilman Neal. This is not an ordinance. Yes, that part needs to be amended as far as saying the city should purchase properties. We're talking about properties that waivers have been signed for. When I chaired housing, we had waivers signed on houses that eventually were transferred over to the land bank. Some of those houses people actually moved in. There was only a few of them that were torn down. The reason why I know they were moved in because there were a few on that list. These are examples of where I'm going with what Mr. Neal is talking about in his resolution. Some of those properties that were waivers had been signed and then they were transferred over to the land bank. I actually took it upon myself when I chaired housing to drive past some of these properties. And I was speechless that these houses were on the demo list. And so I started asking questions about why these certain houses were on the demo list. And then they were transferred to the land bank. And then some of these houses were sold to people through the land bank. They were never torn down. So if we have an opportunity where we can actually keep people in our neighborhoods, keep people in our communities, I think that this is a good thing. And again, this is just a resolution. But the thing that concerns me the most is we've had this for a minute. we have got to do better, and even including myself, I'm not exempt from this, is when we have things that are coming for us, we have an opportunity to ask questions, like with our budget right now. Councilman Fusco has asked for us to submit those questions ahead of time. Councilman Neal has asked for those questions to be submitted ahead of time. So then when we see those issues like that, we can address them and we can tweak them so then it can be better prior to it being voted on. I struggle with, we have all these questions now, when he constantly kept saying, were there questions, were there questions, were there questions. I think it's a great idea. I would take the part out about the city having to purchase properties, because we are transferring properties over to the land bank constantly. There's properties all over the city that are sitting empty that we could put bodies in instead of tearing them down. We can't tear our way down out of this situation. And we can't keep saying we want people to stay here in this community, move to this community, but we're tearing down houses that can be saved. Everybody cannot afford to live downtown. We need to save these houses and quit tearing entire neighborhoods down and leaving streets with 2 and 3 houses on them. Nobody has no one to share those assessments with when you do that to a street. So I support it. I think you should do an addendum, maybe talk with you, Francie, about that language that was put in there. Talk to the law department, whomever drafted it, so they can tweak that part of it, because we shouldn't be purchasing anything. But other than that, I just think we need to do better when you have a committee chairperson saying submit questions ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a great discussion in the health committee this afternoon, and I think we all know kind of that part of our problem, I think, in our city in terms of housing is the lack of personnel within that division for code enforcement. That's part of it. And this here, what I see and what I'm thinking is, like I said, I like it on the surface. I really do. I think it's something worth looking at. But the thing of it is where I struggle with is this appears to me to be labor intensive because it has follow-up. A comparison to the vacant land is, I don't know if that's just, I'm struggling with that, because basically the land is vacant and it goes to a neighbor. We reach out and then we're done, and we're done with it. But this one here is going to require marketing from the get-go to make sure that this program is successful. I don't know if we're very good at that, to be honest with you. I do know that oftentimes that the land bank, they do advertise homes, and you can bid on homes online. I've seen that myself. And so I know that's oftentimes I think the valuation from the land bank is a little different than it used to be. But I have seen homes that are in need of repair, and maybe working with them, negotiating with them, something like a pilot. Like I said, that's a good beginning discussion on this. But I apologize. I will now go to, I see Linda Amobian's hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have reviewed the proposal, and I know we talked about either this one or one like it some time ago. I think the city is at a point where we are really facing a real crisis when it comes to abandoned homes in certain neighborhoods. We have to give the council members who are representing different wards different opportunities to do different kinds of things that might work and be effective for that ward. And I just don't see what the problem is with us trying something new, especially with these ARPA dollars available that we may be able to use to assist individuals who want to purchase one of these homes, work toward ownership, or whatever the case may be, to occupy the residents. And that becomes a challenge for me, is that we're always focusing on what we've done in the past and what we don't have in terms of staff resources and all of that. A lot of times those things are not needed. We have to start looking at things through different lenses and see if we can do things differently. And there's no problem with trying this. It's like every time somebody brings something forth, we're always looking at why we can't do it instead of why we can do it. And I am just really troubled by that. And I really would like to see us, excuse me. For some reason, I'm off camera, and I don't know why. I'm sorry, but I would like to see us give this proposal a try. If it means recommending some tweaking, we can do that and just move forward. Because again, I've seen some homes in different wards that should not be torn down. But because they're on the list, they get torn down, which is ridiculous. And then you have that open lot there, and then you have people thinking about purchasing that lot for little and splitting and all of that, when in fact, there could be different ways of addressing these issues. And I think we need to start looking at what can we do as opposed to what we can't do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, I'm not going to speak for all council, but from some of the colleagues that I've talked to, and from some of the comments that we're hearing, I think we're all kind of checking off on the concept. We like the concept and the idea of it all. It's just the execution and making sure the administration is even on board, which ironically, we have Mr. Lash here whose hand is up. So we'll recognize you, Mr. Lash.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to enter a point of information. Last year, we entered into an unofficial agreement with the land bank, whereas when we have our list of properties that have been ordered raised by our HAP board, they actually go through that list and they take on certain properties. That way we avoid having to absorb those costs in demolition. So I just wanted to enter that for point of information. Not pro or con, I just wanted to share that with this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So can you explain that one more time for us?
Yes, we actually entered into an unofficial agreement or arrangement with the Summit County Land Bank on last year, 2021. Whereas when we actually accumulate this list of properties that have been ordered demolished, they actually go through that list and they determine which ones they want to take. That way they actually take their selected pick, and that way we avoid having to expend the cost of demolishing those properties. So that's something that's unofficial. We just, as you know, the city and Summit County, we just came together and we formulated that agreement. So that is in place as of this moment.
That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that with us. And that sounds like a newer program. So that's very helpful. And perhaps, again, like I said, having that conversation, which I'm happy to do and try to find out a little bit more. But I think, like I said, on the surface, it sounds good. I'm hoping I'm not going to lose everybody because my battery is telling me it's time for me. So is there any more, anyone have their hands raised or questions? Am I out of here?
You're still here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, good. I'm like, my thing just came up to advise me that the battery's running low. And it says that I don't know how much time I have left. Mr. Neal, I see your hand up.
Yes, sir. I just want to share, since we've already set a precedent as a council, with, like I said, the recent one with the sanitary napkins for women being put into restrooms. We passed a resolution because we agreed that it was a good idea. And hearing you're saying that you understand that this is a good idea. The fine details, as you mentioned, need to be worked out in the ordinance. When you say community partners, there's already community partners. Mustard Seed, Nazareth already work. Tri Ministries, Mr. Perry Clark. The Akron Realtors, they have their Sheba report that speaks to this. The state of housing in Black America. You and I met 8 years ago or so, 8 or more, with the Realtors. There are partners, community partners waiting, but we as council and administration have to move. What does it cost us? This actually saves us money. And as far as the part about having something in there, purchasing, if that's a stickler that could come out, honestly, I'd like to leave it in there because I know that if something by chance had to be purchased, that, you know, prudent decision-making would be made. And when I say have to be purchased, I'll give you an example. I've had one house, and I spoke to you about quitclaim deed. We have elders that have homes, and it's not a part of this program, But as we go through, we may find that it could be a part of this program where there could be some debt associated with a house for it to transfer. So if we didn't have an opportunity for the city to have funds to make to transfer funds that would be used for demo to underwrite some other costs, that could create a problem as well. So my part is the details are worked out in the ordinance. The resolution is to keep us on track so that we can move forward. But I would like to say this because, again, 8 weeks this has been out. The only council persons I've heard from are you and Miss Mosley. I'd ask every council person, please write down what you see as pros and write down what you think you see as cons. And this is what we do out in the community. We look to see, do the pros outweigh the cons? And then we move forward.
Mr. Neal, are you asking for a vote today? Because whenever we spoke before.
I was asking for a vote, but this is what I like, so we have it documented. I like for every council person to please write down what they see as pros and what they see as cons. The administration could do the same. And we can look at those next week. And I think that'll help us make a decision.
Yeah, that's your request. If I'm hearing you correctly, then you're saying to take time. Is that correct?
Until next week. Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I see Tara Mosley's hand up.
That's fine. It's okay. I was just going to make a motion for continued time. That's all.
Okay, very good. I'll ask, that's a motion. Is there a second? On time?
Second.
All those in favor of time signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our housing committee. I apologize, but we approved the minutes of the last meeting? I don't recall.
Not.
We did not. Okay.
I'll make that motion. I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Motion second. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the previous meeting signify by saying aye.
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 Against? Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. Sarah?
That is our final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet at 7 o'clock tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.